I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and it's been an honor to work with the Center for Indian Country Development. Both Patrice and the staff have just been great in this process. I'd like to know how many of you were at Salt River Pima in 2016? Could you raise of hands? Okay. We've got a pretty good group, but we also have a lot of new folks, and as we think about the coalition going forward, it's great to have new people interested or people that weren't able to make Scottsdale. Natives are purchasing homes in significant numbers. They're just not purchasing them on trust land. In 2015, according to HMDA data, over 16,000 natives purchased homes. And as Charlene Roundface, the Bureau Chief for Realty at BIA, told us yesterday, they recorded 350 mortgages in that same year on trust land. So the opportunity for choice, as Marietta had alluded to, is limited really by a number of things. Some of those things are within our control, and some of them are external factors that are, further down the road. But one of the things I think that is within our control are the timeframes for loan origination, loan processing, loan closing, and post-loan activity. In Scottsdale, Tonya Kruger's boss, Jeff Bowman, president of Bay Bank, coined a phrase, more, better, faster. And the Tribal Leadership Committee panel later this afternoon will be talking about that. But in lending systems, the way we interpreted that was closing the gap in processing time between fee simple and transactions on trust land. We even set some targets. Residential leases in 30 days, first certified TSR in 30 days, subsequent certified TSR post-closing in 50 days, loan application to close. So on fee simple land, typically for an existing property, you can close a loan in 43 days or less. So the target was set for 60 days on trust land for existing property. Environmental assessments and clearances, 30 days. Renewed interagency collaboration to streamline access to capital. Efficient foreclosure prevention and foreclosure processes necessary for lending to occur. And for each tribal community, multiple loan products to meet the various market niches that can occur in tribal communities. So that's a little bit about the lending systems focus group. Within the lending systems focus group, we had 3 subcommittees. We had leasing and title, we had legal infrastructure, and we had loan products. Tonya Kruger was our chair of the subcommittee for loan products. And then we had Denise Zuni, who couldn't join us today, with a law firm, her own law firm in New Mexico. She is the subcommittee chair for legal infrastructure. And then Lynn Trujillo from leasing and title, raise your hand, Lynn, from USDA in New Mexico, is the chair of the subcommittee for leasing and title. And I do want to thank also the good participation that we had from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Washington. Both Charlene Roundface, Charlene, raise your hand back there. Thank you, Charlene. And I don't know if Beth Winstrom made it yet today. She's the Bureau Chief for LTRO. So with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce our panel members, Tonya Kruger with Bay Bank, Jewel Burnett with First Tribal, and Tony Walters, Executive Director of the National American Indian Housing Council. So with that, I'd like to ask Tonya to start us off in some of your sort of day-to-day challenges in more, better, faster, and some solutions perhaps on the structural level.
Yesterday, Yesterday, I mentioned that one thing that is successful for us is communication. Communication between the borrowers, me as the lender and the borrowers, and also with the tribes. It's reaching out to the tribes, talking with them, make sure that we're involved in their process if they're going to do lending with us. What steps need to be taken. That's kind of key. I can't stress that enough. But it does take us a long time to do trust land. I have success stories, and I have stories that also take us where, 3 years later, we're still waiting to get things done, a lease recorded, mortgage recorded, whatever that may be. We have some success stories that the process has gone really smooth. It's a very new trust land property. There's never been any other leases on the property, and we can get that closed fairly quick. It's the issues that we have is if it's been in trust, leases have been modified, passed down to other family members, all of those things need to get recorded. That can slow up the time frame that we can do for that new person wanting to take over that house. That is the long process. How we can fix that, I don't know. I work for the Oneida tribe. Bay Bank is owned by the Oneida Nation. We have a lot of communication with the Oneida Nation. They just got approved for the Hearth Act, May 22nd, so we're just newly starting that process. So we're hoping that will streamline some of the process for us, hopefully, make it better for us, make it faster, so we could do more, better, faster. That's our goal. The Oneida tribe's been really working well as tribal members and the tribe themselves acquiring land within the reservation boundaries. Tribal members are buying land and the tribe is buying land to eventually convert it into trust land within the reservation boundaries. So because we're limited to the amount of trust land that we have open and active now. So this is a way for them to acquire more land within the reservation boundaries. I know the Menominee tribe is looking to do something like that as well. They've also have bought land and have converted it to trust land successfully, and we've done lending on that land. So our challenges mostly are just waiting the process, waiting for the process to happen, waiting for the leases to get recorded, making sure they're showing up in the certified TSR. Some tribes have access to the TAM system, which is very helpful for us. When we're ordering a certified TSR to do some lending, our tribes will order the informational TSR to find out if there's any issues up front. That has been very helpful. We've found issues that we have to fix before, but it's very helpful to find that on the front end than it is in the back end. When we order a certified TSR and we get the report and there's not a recorded lease on there, we're already 3 months into it. So that's very helpful to find out a week into it versus 3 months into it, because now you have your tribal member waiting 3 months, we get the report, and there's no lease on there. So it's very helpful for the TAM system, for tribal members, tribes to have access to that, because it helps us find issues on the front end versus having to wait to get that certified report, find out there's issues, take a month or two to correct it, and then get another certified TSR. So that the TAM system for our tribes have been very helpful that we work with to find any issues on the front end instead of the back end. So that's helped tremendously.
Okay, thank you, Tonya. Okay, next we'd like to hear from Joe Burnett, First Tribal.
Thanks, Steve. So obviously, right, I'm the education guy. Heard it once, you hear it again, and I'll keep saying it as long as I'm here sitting at the table. So capacity for ground level education on the reservation, and really being able to tell a story to everybody that's out there that homeownership is possible on reservation grounds. It is what the 184 program was designed to do. And as Steve mentioned, the numbers aren't there. I don't think they ever have been there. We have good years, we have bad years. But I think ground level credit counseling is key, and the places that we see flourishing in this area are places like Little Traverse Band. K-Roll in there does an excellent job. Seminole Tribe of Florida, their entire team, it's just a massive team that just takes the tribal members by hand and takes them all the way through the process. We got Bob and Jason in the crowd, like I mentioned yesterday at Salish. And we got Cheyenne River and Sysem Wahpeton in South Dakota that have people that just grab the bull by the horns and take it down the road, you know, and get those people to where they need to be if they're not ready today, to get them ready for tomorrow to be homeowners. But again, that conversation around the dinner table that so many of us didn't have growing up, that needs to start taking place. And I think it is, because as long as I've been doing this, we continue to see growth. We continue to see improvement in a lot of different areas. Industry-wide, we need to do more education, you know, programmatically. It's good to see Fannie and Freddie, you know, coming back in after the debacle of 2008, starting to work with Kelly Coffey and that group, and I'm hopeful that my management team will dive into and start offering other products. HUD 24 is an awesome product, but Indian Country deserves a choice, so I think that's great that that's coming to the table. I mentioned yesterday, too, that tribal leadership needs to take a more active role. We didn't have too many tribal leaders in the room yesterday. I don't know how many we have here today. I know there's some different faces out there today, but tribal leadership is key. Some of the areas, you know, BIA was a big conversation yesterday. I sat up there with Charlene and Beth. Obviously, it's no secret, land leases, TSRs, we can be doing a lot better job. But again, I said yesterday we need to focus on the places that are doing well and key off of them. We have some pretty awesome areas that do a good job today. Aberdeen, South Dakota, Portland, Oregon, Marilyn Begay down at Albuquerque. Marilyn will do what she can. When I call her or email her, she'll turn as fast as she can. Infrastructure. Infrastructure is huge, not only from an individual standpoint, but from a project development point too, if your tribe's looking at a development. So the lack of infrastructure dollars that are available out there today. One of the biggest hurdles that we run into as of recent here in the last couple of years with infrastructure is Indian Health Service. They'll give us a letter saying that they're going to do the water and sewer for Jules' project that he's building home, but they don't put a dollar amount. So that dollar amount that they have budgeted to do Jules' water and sewer for my new manufactured home or whatever it may be, they might only have budgeted, say, $12,000, you know, for the septic system in the well or the water line or what have you. Well, we ran into a case on the lender side that there wasn't enough money budgeted for that project for the infrastructure. It went over. They didn't have the money budgeted, so our borrower had to, you know, get creative. We had to get creative and find those extra dollars for that infrastructure. So we're asking Indian Health Service to put their budget dollar on those individual letters that they're giving the lender, so we know what that budget is. And most of the time, it's more than what's needed, which is good. But in some cases, it's lacking. In some cases, it's missing at all because they don't even know what their budget is. They know that, you know, an average in South Dakota, I think it's about $4,500 to $5,500 for a septic system. And to dig a well, depends on where you're at. You know, if you have to go 400 feet or if you have to go 100 feet, cost difference is pretty big. Environmental assessments. I don't think there's been a lot of conversation around this as of late, but in some places it's a really big challenge to get environmental assessments done. At one tribe at one particular time, they were charging up to $2,300 to give an environmental assessment for their individual tribal members on their home sites. I heard yesterday from the gentleman at Ho-Chunk about an endangered bee. Well, I've had a turtle, a beetle, a cactus, and there was one more, a butterfly. I've had those 4 things kill a home site lease, and the tribal member had to pick a different home site. So they're important. If we have cultural findings on those sites, you know, we have land that's being, you know, mined and what have you. I think Joe brought that up yesterday. I think that's important that we recognize and, you know, make adjustments when those kinds of findings are there on those lands. It's a bad deal for our tribal members to have to go and try and find a different home site because, as I said yesterday, I have one tribal member that the tribe told that they didn't have any land available in between Mobridge, South Dakota, and Fort Yates, North Dakota, which I find very hard to believe because Standing Rock's so big. But if their home site is one that cannot be developed, they need to move on. And it's tough. It's not always that easy to go find a different home site. So I understand the environmental piece, but it is a challenge. We do have some tribes that have their entire reservations mapped, so it's pretty quick. But we have some tribes that have no idea, and it's a start from the ground on up with environmentals.
So,
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, I'm glad you brought the issue forward because we kind of skirted around it yesterday. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Jason Adams, Sales Scrutiny. I was waiting for an opportunity to bring this issue forward, and yesterday we kind of skirted it. But the whole issue with environmentals really comes back to the idea that we can have a site with 5 different agencies with 5 different environmentals being done, and they don't talk to each other. And we got to get some movement on that. We got to get some change there, even within HUD. If you use 2 sides of the HUD office for funding, you got 2 different environmentals. Within HUD, they don't accept environmentals from one side of the house to the other. And so we've got to have something done on this. For a lot of time, it doesn't take up a lot of time in the process because each step has to be done anyway, but it would just make it streamlined a lot easier if that first environmental that was done by BIA when a home site is developed would be accepted by everybody else. I just wanted to throw that in. Thank you for touching on the subject.
So I'll throw just one more piece out there, and I don't mean to, I'm not taking a personal shot at my friends at HUD, at the HUD 184 program at all here by any means, but I'm also a common sense kind of guy. I'll always admit I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but when common sense comes into play, I try and apply it. But so the BIA and the tribe, they approved Jewel for a home site lease, right? Well, there's an environmental process they have to go through to even get to that point before they're going to sign off and approve it. So there's one stop right there. Environmental's done. Home site lease has been granted. At 184, we have to get 2 more environmental forms signed. Again, they can transfer that data, but still it seems like it's repetitious. If we got a home site lease, we should know that, in my mind, we're done. We should move forward and not need these other 2 forms and keep moving, right? But there's process flows and things that we have to get done. But to Jason's point, I think we can all talk and try and more better, more faster, down the road. But last piece that I see, tribes across the country are getting more and more active every year with developments on their own using, whatever they can that's available to them, one being 184 program with project development. So I think the tribes are getting more creative, getting smarter because they know they have to. The $100 money trees in the backyard, I don't know if they ever existed, but that's kind of the attitude that, tribes were just thinking that, that they're bleeding and they can't stop the bleed. But those money trees never existed in my mind, but they're getting smaller and smaller, and those $100 bills aren't falling off those branches as much as they were in the past with the programs that were available. So tribe TDHEs need to take a more active role in development on their reservations. There's more and more tribes that are doing that today. With doing a development and financing under the 184 program, it's not as hard as the tribes or housing authorities think it is. I think a lot of them maybe have gaming credits that they did with casinos and things like that and built these large commercial developments. That's a lot of work and it's a lot of painstaking process. The 184 program in a development piece is not really that difficult to put together from a credit package standpoint. A lot of the work is on the tribe side with obviously construction costs, finding the contractors, things like that, getting the environmentals done. But from a credit standpoint, once I get that package from you, there's not a lot of fear. We have yet, and we have some people from HUD in the crowd I know today, we have yet, at least that I'm aware of, to have a TDHE or a tribe be declined for a 184 project. So they're getting more common. Some are small, some are big. And when I say small and big, I mean onesie, twosie type things. And, there's 20, 30 unit projects out there too, which I consider are big. I mean, let's start with 5. Let's guinea pig 5 and move on from there. So those are kind of some of my touching points. But the biggest thing for tribes and housing authorities, politicians in the room, leaders in the room, that this is a tough one because your rent caps, I think things need to change and be reviewed with your rent caps that you're charging for your rental housing on your reservations. Some of our reservations have a max cap, on a 4-bedroom house of $250 a month. That's got to change, I think, in order to push those high-income people out of those rental housing into home ownership. So it's a tough conversation, but it's, again, change isn't always easy. So thank you.
Thank you, Jewel. We are fortunate, the coalition, to have partnered with the National American Indian Housing Council under Tony Walter's leadership on a survey of the Indian housing authorities and TDHEs across the country and their membership on home ownership issues. We acknowledge in the coalition that we didn't have as much participation from Indian housing authorities and TDHEs as we'd like, and so the survey was a great opportunity for us to try to dive a little deeper with and include the opinions of some of the membership. So, Tony, if you'd provide your observations on the survey, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. I'd like to just introduce myself. My name's Tony Walters. I'm a member of the Cherokee Nation from Tahlequah, Oklahoma. I've been with the National American Indian Housing Council for a little over a year now as the executive director. I think until I see a room where I probably recognize more people than I don't, I'll probably have to keep introducing myself because I know I'm pretty new to the housing arena and housing space. So before that, I worked at the Department of Interior with Indian Affairs in the past administration, and then I worked for the Congress or the Senate Committee for Indian Affairs, staff director for Senator John Tester for the committee. So I think I met a lot of folks that way, and I think when on the topic of tribal leadership engagement, I think it does deserve a lot more discussion. I think when I was on the Hill, when you're meeting with tribal leaders coming through with their priorities, it was pretty rare, I think, for housing to be at the top of the list, which is odd because housing touches so much. We talk about housing, impacting education, impacting health. Statistics across Indian country, attracting professionals to work in the jobs that are vacant in our communities. But there is a segregation between a lot of tribal government structures and their housing departments or housing authorities. So, and that came through both on the Hill and in my current position. So right now I'm working most directly with the tribal housing authorities and TDHEs because that's who our members are. Our members are the housing departments across Indian country, but we don't always get that tribal leadership engagement. And I think the question yesterday came up, how do we do that? And I think if we had more tribal leaders hearing the conversations that were happening yesterday, I think that would be a great start. I think if a tribal leader hears that there's another community in Montana that's got 50, 60, 70% home ownership in their community, I think people would, perk up. And the next question might be, how'd you do that? And they may not perk up when they hear the answer. It takes 40, 50 years to build that system and that community in place. But it does take that, initial spark, initial interest, and how do you do that? And I think tying it to those other metrics of education and healthcare, and you can't have, your students can't learn very well if you're in overcrowded homes. You're going to have, health issues if you're in, 10, 15 people in a home. So addressing some of those issues at the tribal leadership level, developing, land use plans and comprehensive tribal or housing plans in conjunction with our own housing authority, I think is what we need to be moving towards. And I think we are moving towards that at certain communities. And just a matter of, I already forgot the phrase, but more, better, faster, I suppose. So I think we're still moving towards that way. To transition over to the survey, I asked my staff when we put this out, when the last time NHC had done a survey, and we're a pretty small staff. We've only got 6 people, and some of them have only been there for 4 or 5 years, and they said they couldn't really remember doing one, particularly on home ownership data and some of the questions that we were asking. So I think it was a good thing to do, as a good exercise to go through. I think the participation rate was a little low, but all of our tribal housing programs that's their day job. So their day job isn't to fill out a survey for us. It's they're working with the tribal members in their community to provide some housing opportunities. So we got about 40 or 50 responses to the survey, and I think over the next year we're going to try to probably do a little bit more regional-based surveys. Right now our membership is broken out into 9 regions. I think if we focus on each region one at a time, we might be able to get some higher participation in. I think we'll recognize a lot of the unique characteristics of a certain geography and certain issues that come up in certain areas over others. So I think we've got some room to improve on that, and I think we can do that. Happy to have NHC's help on developing the survey and developing some of the questions, particularly on the home ownership side. And I think we did get some good lessons out of that, even with the participation rate. I think we did see some trends in the data that was there. So I think it's something that we can talk about. The first thing I'll say is, out of the survey results, we had nearly 75% say they have home ownership programs, which I think is good to see. I'm not sure if that would, map out if we had more participation. I don't know if the rate's quite 75% with home ownership programs. But when you think about that, when you look at the data there, of those that participated, you had 75% to say they have home ownership programs. Only, 6 out of 40 or so said they had 184 loans in the last 3 years that led to housing units being developed in their community. So you have, 75% have homeownership programs, but it goes way down for the number who have actually used some of these loan products. USDA and the VA loan programs, they weren't there at all. So there's a disconnect there, and people knowing what the resources are and being able to put them to good use. I think we had a question there of, what under current development, what do you have under current development? What products are you using? Again, it was about 6 or 8 had USDA 184, but we did see a couple with RD and VA loan products as well. So that's a good sign, I think, as people are moving forward, they are picking up some of these new, or not new, but some of these other resources that have been there for a while. And you look at some of the other questions there, like what would you like to have more, training and technical assistance on? They had check boxes of all these different types of loan products. I think most of them checked almost all of those boxes. So it's clear to me as an organization, we have a lot of work to do at NAIHC that we can provide more resources to our members on what's out there, how to utilize it, not just say it's out there, but how, really show them, what the steps are. And I think we do that through a lot of our events, but I think, not everyone makes it to our events, so I think we can do a better job of putting those resources online and making them more available. Some of the other statistics that came out of that, yesterday we talked a lot about the, pragmatic issues with the process itself and some of the, process at BIA and HUD. And when you look at the data, only about 25% of the participants said that was, a big challenge for them, or one of the biggest challenges. Which, not to let you guys off the hook, that's still a big challenge. Don't take your foot off the pedal on fixing some of those. But when you looked at the data, 64% cited access to credit or the members' credit as a big challenge or obstacle to getting loan products in their community. Another 45%. Said home buyer education was an issue. So when you think about some of the obstacles, it's not just the process itself. Obviously, that needs to be looked at and figure out a way to maneuver and speed up. But it's the issue, and it's always been an issue in Indian country. It's the types of individuals that are on these reservations where there's low income, high unemployment. People, you need to find ways to get these individuals ready and prepared for home ownership, and I think there's many ways to do that. One of the things that NHC is doing is our Pathways Home program with the Train the Trainer program, where we'll train tribal housing professionals how to conduct home buyer education in their community. And we've had this going on for a number of years, a couple decades at least, I believe. And the numbers here for last year, we had 123 tribal housing staff trained under our Pathways Home program last year. So that's 120 people that can then go out and they themselves can train, dozens or tens or up to 100 or more individuals in their communities once we provide the materials, and we do provide the materials. And we try to do that at no to little cost to these communities once they've been trained. Those 123 instructors comprise 73 tribes. Since 2004, the numbers that I have said, we've trained 884 tribal housing staff over the last 14 or 15 years. So it's been a good program. I think it's been getting a lot of good information out to tribal housing staff and professionals in these communities. But I think with part of the turnover that you see in some of the tribal housing departments and authorities, it's a constant need to keep the training going and keep getting new people trained. And this year we've had some partnerships to update the curriculum. We did that earlier this year. We had USDA grants. We used tribal partners to update that and print new materials. We've already had some of those materials going out the door. So I think we're going to see more home buyer education in some of the communities that are out there that have already been trained. We're finding new partners, I think, in the second half of the year to even keep that momentum going. So we're looking forward to finalizing some of those details moving forward as well. And I think that'll increase the access of home buyer education in a lot of communities. We're also trying to find partners with credit building organizations that can help tribes and their housing departments, find ways to help report some of the payments that they're getting through rents and whatnot to some of the credit bureaus and to try to help their own tenants build their credit that way. And I think that'll be an important tool if we can get that off the ground, if we can keep that moving forward. And there's other utilities and things like that that come along with it. I think that when you have people living in tribal housing that are paying bills on time, we need to be helping them build their credit by reporting that where we can. So I think a lot of these tools will help spur more lending on both fee and trust lands in tribal communities across the board. So that's just some of the things I think we're doing. Kind of covered a lot of the survey, but I'll stop there and we'll start answering questions, I guess.
That's great, Tony. Really appreciate you going through those numbers. And I do agree with you. Homebuyer education and credit repair, were huge areas of importance. And we had with the coalition a homebuyer readiness focus group. Is Crystal Langholtz here? Okay, there's Crystal. She was one of the co-chairs. Anybody else on the homebuyer readiness group that participated? Are you pointing to somebody? Oh, okay. Great. Well, this, it's such an important effort, and I'm glad to see Tony's group coming out with a new update to Pathways. And, I guess what's sort of hit home to me is that because of the turnover, that occurs and the need to continue to upgrade, staff capacity along this line, that this is a really important area and a really important area that we should be focusing on collectively, I think, in support. Well, thank you. Let's see. You also mentioned, or one of the things you didn't mention I was wondering about is that in my quick look at the survey, it looked like that a large number of Indian housing authorities have set up lease purchase programs. And I'm wondering if that is sort of in response to, either legacy, programs that were there with HUD and they're just using the HUDs to just sort of replace them, or if it is, their sense that the underwriting criteria of the loan products is too stiff, too challenging, and thus, offering a lease purchase option is, is more amenable to community members. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of the legacy item that you mentioned. That's the way that things had been operated before. I think for probably the larger part is that tribes just want to take care of their own members, and one way to do that themselves is to create, lease to purchase type processes and housing opportunities without going through outside lenders. There is an issue too of lack of lenders in certain areas, and I think that'll drive certain tribes to create those programs as well. But I think overall it's just a mix of reasons. I think every tribe's going to be kind of unique in that regard, but I think mostly it's that tribes who just see it as an avenue and a way to help their own membership through that type of program without having members have to go through, maybe a foreign type of foreign for them, foreign for that community's lending process that other people could navigate.
Okay. Let me try to engage our audience here a little bit. Having heard our two lenders and our executive director from NAIHC, any questions or any thoughts up to this point on anything that's been discussed? Yes, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Say, a question for Tony, and maybe Joel could help out with it a little bit. We've built office space up in Fort Belknap for, we have 150 new employees at a call center. And as we were doing the center and building it, we found out that the IHS doesn't do any infrastructure for businesses. They do in residential areas and stuff for homes, but yet they've never built a home for a long time either at Belknap. But my question to you, Tony, since you're on, I'm from Montana too, so good friends with John, and he's up for a hell of a fight this year down there, but we got to get him back on there. But that being said, is there any initiative from the National American Indian Housing Council to possibly change legislation or add it to the IHS guidelines or rules and regulations that they should be helping us if we're creating economic development on the reservations? We should be able to talk to them folks so they can build us a lagoon or 2 lagoons or something that nature. But they won't do it now to a business, but they'll do it for residential areas and stuff. So we had to find a good way to address the situation for water at the call center and also the wastewater. We purchased a wastewater system out of Oregon. Cost us $650,000 to do it, and your lagoons cost about $500,000 also. But this wastewater system is unique and it's state of the art. You have filters and ultraviolet rays. And they say you can drink it when it gets done being processed, but I haven't tried that yet. So I'll take somebody's word for that. And I just want to let you know that if you could, lead some legislation, you get IHS to change their rules and regulations and now more funding for economic development.
Well, just real quick, I don't think that's come up specifically as an issue on the business side of things. I think there has been discussions on how to improve the IHS program overall. I'll add that to the list of things that we can bring up when it's appropriate or as it's appropriate to folks on the Hill. When we talk about legislation, the HOSDA reauthorization, and any other tribal housing issue, I think I'll take some effort this fall really to do a comprehensive list of things that we could include in future legislation and try to get away from just an HOSDA reauthorization, but move more towards tribal housing, improvements across the board. So I think I'll certainly keep that one in mind and figure out a way. That program I think is heavily burdened across the board already. So I think adding more uses to that. I think that's kind of been a pushback generally for that, not specifically to business operations, but I know that's an issue with the program generally, but I'll keep that in mind, certainly.
Any other questions so far? Oh, yes, Ted.
So many microphones, so little time. Not a question, not a comment, just an offer from USDA Rural Development. We had a pretty good appropriation in fiscal year 18 for water and waste, have about 3 times the amount of dollars in loans to help finance water and waste throughout rural areas, including tribes, as well as about twice as many grants as we had in years past. No one knows what's going to happen on October 1st, so if you don't know who to contact with your local USDA Rural Development folks, talk to Lynn or Andrea Hively or myself before you go. Thanks.
Thank you, Ted. Okay, I'd like to come back to our lenders, and I'd like to ask Tonya. Tonya, you talked about the importance of communication, and part of that is, or a big part of that is outreach and communication with tribes. And I know Bay Bank does a lot of outreach throughout Wisconsin. What sort of best practices, certainly the outreach in itself is a best practice, but what sort of best practices, would you recommend to anybody working with a tribal community, particularly on the lending front?
First thing, I know it's going to be harder for Jewel, but visit your tribes. I mean, there's nothing like going to the reservation and having them show off their properties, what they've done, plans they have in the work. Take time to, that's what we do, is we take time to visit our tribes. I've done several meetings. I've been to Ho Chunk to talk to their legislation. Been there, Black River Falls. I've traveled to Michigan, visit some tribes there. I go to Stockbridge. We've gone to Menominee. I mean, obviously, we're in the backyard of Oneida, but we do a visit. We visit our tribes, so we're out there. Another lender and I went to Red Cliff. We were participated in their spring home show, promoting the 184 loan program, promoting lending, asking questions, just being there and being active and being known in the community. That's what we do. When we visited Red Cliff, we also stopped at Bad River. They're fairly close, so we met with their housing department and got to meet with them, talk to them about the projects that they're working on. It's just taking the time to do that. So that has been a lot of my travel lately, is just been going out and visiting, making our name known. I'm Native American. When I bought my house, I didn't even know the Section 184 loan existed. So when my husband and I bought our house, I didn't do the 184 loan because I didn't know it existed. So that's kind of been my goal, is if I didn't know about this, how many other people don't know about this? So that's why I'm out there promoting the program, because I didn't know about it. I didn't know that there was a program that I could only put 2.25% down, have a 30-year fixed rate loan. Because when we bought our house, we were in an ARM product. It was a first-time home buyer program. I had a really great rate for 5 years. I didn't know the 184 loan program existed. So that's kind of what lights a fire for me, is because I'm a tribal member and I didn't even know about this program. So it's getting out there. I really believe in participating, getting active in the community, we've gone to the powwows. We've gone to Oneida's powwow, and we set up a booth all day long. And we're there, we're giving t-shirts away, we're giving little, items away, but it's just getting out there, because there's a lot of tribal members that come from all over to the powwows. It's just doing those little things, being active in your community, getting us out there, getting the name out there, Bay Bank, in our community. That has been key for us. And that is something that I work hard for, is just to get this product known.
And that reminds me, going back to the survey, and if Tonya wasn't aware of the 184 program, and we have so many tribal housing authorities developing lease purchases programs, if they understood the underwriting criteria for an RD 502, or perhaps were better aware of the VA direct program, if the tribes wouldn't be able to better leverage some of those NAHASDA dollars by pulling in some of this other capital. Jewel, you had mentioned TDHEs and tribes taking a more active role in probably the whole process: homebuyer education, foreclosure prevention, environmental assessments. What sort of best practices have you sort of developed over the years? And you work with tribes all over the country. Every state, or every state that has a tribal community?
Just about. We're licensed in every state that has an Indian country footprint in it, except for a couple, I believe, right now. Actually 3, but 1, we lost our brick and mortar there in Missouri, so we got to wait till we get that brick and mortar back in Missouri. But Rhode Island and New York, we're getting closer to being online. But yeah, I travel nationwide helping tribes and tribal housing authorities put their housing projects together when they're interested in doing a project. I'm using 184 program dollars. Like Tonya said, she is absolutely right. I think the lenders that are successful in Indian country in general, not just with 184, USDA guys are out there, boots on the ground. You have to go visit those communities. If you try and just operate business by phone, internet, and what have you, it's going to work to a certain level. But when you're putting projects together with tribes and housing authorities, you need to be face-to-face when you get down to it. Things can get kicked off the conference call, obviously, like anything in life, but when the pencil starts hitting the paper and everything starts getting going, it's face-to-face, and it's a lot of them. So I think it's important for those lenders to be out there giving that technical assistance directly to the tribes and housing authorities. And with that being said, there were some comments yesterday, and even Tony said it today. Some tribes are using that excuse that there's a lack of lenders. Well, I just told you I have a footprint of pretty much everywhere in Indian country. I don't like it when I hear a lack of lenders. I get it. I know what's being said. I know we need more lenders. But those lenders that are out there that used to be or could be in the business, whatever way, shape, or form, those bigger lenders, they have the resources. They have the capacity. We talk about tribal capacity, housing capacity on the reservations. They don't have it in some of those smaller tribes. But these bigger banks, they have the capacity. They could do the business if they really wanted to. They don't want to because they don't have people on staff. They need to go out and chase people that have the experience or develop that experience within that institution. so that they know what they're doing in any country. It's a specialized niche. No matter what you're doing in any country, you have to know the ins and outs. Tribal government, they're all sovereign nations. It was said yesterday, it is a fact. Each tribe is different in its own way, and we have to respect that. So if you're going to choose a part of the country and do business in any country, you better take the time to learn that part of the country and learn that tribe's operation. So I don't like it when I hear, we don't have enough lenders. I agree with it, but if you need help with a housing project, there's lenders out there that will help you today. So if you have a tribe that's using that as an excuse, it's not an excuse anymore. I'm not that bad of a guy. I'm pretty easy to get along with, so I'll come to you face to face and we can talk through the issues that you're having and hopefully come up with a plan for some houses on your reservation. So.
Part of the challenge is that I think a lot of lenders get discouraged about the program because of the timeframes and how much it costs to originate a loan in Indian country. Perhaps maybe not having the expertise that the First Tribal or Bay Bank has. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about the processing times. We've set some goals, as I said, for the Lending System Focus Group on processing times. What has been your experience, Tonya, on obtaining leases and obtaining the first certified title status report?
Well, it's kind of hit or miss. We have some success stories. I mean, I've gotten a TSR where I've called the BIA to order a TSR and I've literally gotten it in a day. And that's like rare.
Unicorn.
Yeah, that's a unicorn. So we've had that success where I actually called and I said, "Are you serious?" I double checked and triple checked because that just doesn't happen. And then we've had some, I have a customer that their land got converted into trust land and we had to get their lease recorded. And this started May of last year and we just got the recorded lease on a certified TSR in June. So it took us 13 months to get that process going. So it's kind of a hit or miss. It's not always going to be like, okay, it's going to be, 3 months to get this or 60 days. Every situation is different. Every tribe's different. Depends if they've already got the lease recorded and approved. If, there's a lot of variables into that. When I sit down with a customer, I kind of tell them the process. I ask, okay, where are you on your leasing process? That's like one of the first questions I ask. Do you have your lease? Do you have your lot? Is your lease approved? Has it been sent to the BIA for approval and recording? I'm asking all of those questions because I know how long that takes. But my tribal member is excited to build their house sitting at my desk. They have no idea. They know they signed paperwork. They don't know what the process is at. So that's why I'm communicating with, the leasing department or the housing department, whoever's taking care of that, to find out where that status is. And explaining to them right away, I'm upfront with everyone that's in my office saying, okay, these are the steps. This is what it takes. It could take 45 days. It could take 90 days. I'm not sure where it is in the process, but this is the general ballpark. I have a customer who's contacted me. He's already got their lease. It's whole chunk, already got their lease done. It's already approved. We're waiting for the certified TSR, and then we're going to build this summer yet. So fingers crossed that we get that. He's just waiting for his building, his contract. They're finalizing their contract to build their house, and hopefully we can move forward with that. I usually tell people that come to my desk, minimum 60 days for getting that first certified TSR, minimum 60 days. If we get it faster, great. But again, it's a minimum. That's what I'm telling everybody. We've had some that have taken a little bit longer than that. Some have taken 3 months. Some have taken 45 days. So it's kind of hit or miss. Just depends on where it's at, what's been done on that track. If there has been a recently recorded mortgage and something's been updated, it tends to take a little bit faster because there's been work on that track. Sometimes it's longer, but I usually tell people at least you're looking minimum 60 days before we can even get that certified TSR. Now, I also tell my customers, I'm not ordering your appraisal right away either. 184 program appraisals are good for 120 days. If you give me your plans and I order your appraisal right now, and it takes over 120 days to get that certified TSR, now we have to incur more expenses to get an appraisal update. So I don't order the appraisal now until we get that certified TSR, because then all of our information is new. You know, where has been some issues is everything's good to go. You're sitting at my desk, credit's good, everything's good, we're looking good. We get that certified TSR, now my credit documents are out of date. So now I have to order a new credit report. Now all of a sudden you got a late payment, or now you have a collection that you didn't know about. So now we have to address those issues. That's real life, that happens. I mean, we've had a customer that went and got a new loan. She's applying for a mortgage, went and got a new loan. Now her debt to income ratio is too high. So she waited, now we can't do her loan because her debt to income ratio is too high. I mean, this whole waiting process, it affects everybody. It's day to day. It's real. So we've had to deny people in the process because all of a sudden they didn't pay their student loans. Student loans are still a debt. You have to make those payments. So we've had to deny people because of those. Those are real life situations. Those are the challenges that we face on doing lending in Indian country. You have to be patient. You have to have patience. I said yesterday, we're not on commission, so we're unique in that. We're a community bank. So I don't care if someone borrows $5,000 or $50,000 or $250,000, doesn't matter to me. But I'm still going to work for you, and I'm still going to make sure that you get all your documents into me, and you know, I'm going to update you. If I don't hear anything, I'm going to email you or call you and say, okay, I'm still waiting. You're not going to be forgotten, but this is real life. So,
Thank you, Tonya. I think Joel would like to weigh in on some of his observations here.
Yeah, here's some of the kind of things that scare away other lenders. And I think here's an idea also go along with it. But right now, First Tribal, company-wide, we've got one loan that's over 3 years old that we've been waiting for the BIA to get it recorded and give us our certified TSR. We'd have been done inside that 3 years, but once it got up to the regional office, they determined that the legal description had an error in it on the lease. How that got to that point, I don't know. So they're correcting that. Otherwise, that loan wouldn't have hit that 3-year mark. Obviously, if you don't know, each lender has a delivery time frame. Our secondary market has a different time frame for each lender. Those time frames, I think, are negotiated. I don't know why. I don't know why it's not the same across the board for every lender. Once it hits that 3-year mark, we either got to look at buying it back or make other arrangements at First Tribal. But I know Tonya in the past had said that they have to manage those themselves, and they're fined on a monthly or quarterly basis, what have you there. But one of my ideas around this, and it goes back to maybe some new legislation, is these secondary markets are whomever's buying 184 loans, or loans on trust land in general. I think that needs to be a standard time frame, whether it's 3 years or 4 years or whatever it may be. Let's make it the same across the board. I think 3 years is plenty of time, but technically the loan is in default after the first year. I talked about capacity at the lending level and creating that. Well, we have 2 people at First Tribal. That's what they do. They chase these recorded mortgage docs, the TSRs. They do all that for us. We don't have to worry about that as salespeople. But I've got the one loan that's over 3 years. I've got 67 loans that we're waiting for that were closed in 2017 to come back from the BIA recorded with the certified TSR. I'm hoping 20 of those 67 are sitting on my desk, JC, when I get back to the office. The BIA did call me a week and a half ago, and she said she did put them in mail, so that might be down to 47. But I've got another 14 that were done that we're waiting for in 2016. So our list isn't that bad for the volume that we do, but to have to wait 1+ years to get documents back, it's unacceptable. I had the agency tell me and acknowledge that they had 6 of our mortgages on his desk, and they sat there for the next 4 months because he couldn't get to them. So we talk about these timeframes, Steve, and what we hear from the BIA saying that, you know, we have these policies in place that, no, mortgages are a priority. They're supposed to get moving as soon as, you know, 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is. But to sit on one's desk for 3+ months and being acknowledged that they're sitting there, it is just unacceptable. But there was a lot of stuff before that with that particular tribe too, that they should have been on his desk probably a year before that. So it's not always a hiccup within the BIA process flow too. Sometimes the bottleneck is at the tribal level. So that's kind of some of the things that's one of the main things I think that really scares other lenders away, because they just can't afford those timeframes. When I was at my previous employer, I know that there was no ifs, ands, or buts. We had to buy them back. And I was told by upper management it was a cost of about 12 to 14% to buy those mortgages back. And anybody who knows anything about mortgage lending, you know that we don't make 12 to 14% on those loans. So if you're continuing to buy loans back at that rate, you're not going to stay in business very long. So that's a big issue within the lending world. I get it. But again, on the back end of things, I think those secondary market, whoever's buying a loan, I know Federal Home Loan Bank buys loans, Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie Mae, a lot of lenders that are in the 184 business, a lot of their business will go to Ginnie Mae. Ginnie Mae just has a better price, I think, is what it comes down to. But Fannie and Freddie have been out there buying loans. But I think we just need to have across the board, maybe a little bit more leniency when it's a 184 loan or a conventional loan on trust land, that there needs to be a bigger, brighter understanding about it takes a little bit longer sometimes, even though we're working towards, hopefully we don't have these discussions in the next 10 years that we're hearing deals taking 1+ years to get recorded and sent back to the lender. I'm hoping that's a conversation in the past as we move forward, so.
I would be happy with 3 years. Ours is 1 year. And we get charged $35 a month per file that we don't have that loan guarantee certificate for. And I as well have a loan that will be 4 years in September, and we still do not have a recorded mortgage or a certified TSR. 4 years. So the issue is the same exact issue. There was a problem with the legal description on the lease. That got corrected, had to go back to the tribe, get approved, everything. And then I had asked, I said, well, is our mortgage legal description correct? Yes, yours is fine. Are you sure? Yes. Come to find out, 2.5, 3 years later, our legal description was wrong on the mortgage. So we had to do an affidavit that has been sent and is still not recorded. So September will be 4 years that we still don't have that. And we have a handful, we have probably about 8 loans right now that are over 1 year that we're getting fined on for not having recorded documents. So we're a community bank. We're not a large lender. We do our funding through Federal Home Loan Bank. If we do more, better, faster, and we have all these issues, this could make or break a bank. We have a very good relationship with the Federal Home Loan Bank. We do the Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago, and we, tell them, we give them our notes, what we're doing, to try to resolve this. We're constantly in contact with the tribes, the BIA, to get these issues resolved. And we're lucky enough, knock on wood, that we haven't had to buy a loan back yet. But it's, after 3 years, after 4 years it'll be, I'm sure we might not be so lucky sometime soon, because this is an issue for lenders. We do our own servicing, so we keep our loans in-house at Bay Bank. So this is our issue. It's not anyone else's issue. It's our issue to follow up with this.
I think the Lending Systems Focus Group has really made it a concerted effort to dialogue and to engage the Bureau, regarding sort of industry needs, and to hopefully reciprocate, with training to the industry on how, all of these documents could be submitted more accurately on the front end, so that there's less chance of kickback or, legal descriptions that are incorrect. With that, let me ask any audience questions of the panel real quick here before we conclude. Okay. Well, I want to thank Tonya Kruger, Jill Burnett, and Tony Walters for participating on the panel.